Hi, welcome to video 3 of 10 of the Type 2 Diabetes course for comfort eaters. If you're starting here, you might want to start at the first video, so just search for T2D_01 and you'll be able to find the first video. So this course is all about helping you to find the best way to overcome type 2 diabetes if you're like me and you love food, you're a comfort eater. So one of the important things is that when you get that shock that you might have type 2 diabetes, or you're going to get it, it's like a wake-up call that allows you to lift your head up from the grind of life. And what normally happens is you then feel like you're in a place where you've got just two choices. So this is probably a situation you've been in before in your life. If you ever dieted, you'll know you want to change, but also you've got a little voice in your head, that skepticism, and it's basically saying you can't do it. The two options you're kind of presenting yourself with are two extremes, and one way is just carry on as I was, business as usual, put my head back in the sand. The second way is that of the common way, which is I'm gonna have to go on a diet. And everybody knows diet equals misery. So that's the kind of binary options we've got in our head. Now, the real issue is, if we go back to normal, well, then we're going to have problems longer term. And, you know, diabetes, type 2 diabetes is something where in your later lives it will really have a restrictive effect on you. It's likely to reduce your mobility, and you're likely to have really serious secondary conditions. And you know, this is something that is really worrying, and it's not something you should be thinking about every day. It's something you should use to motivate you, because you can change and you can actually rewrite that unwritten history. That potential, you know, your potential to change is massive. If you can just make a small change, it doesn't necessarily have to be as big as you imagine. So one of the things I want to talk about is things like when we think about which diet to do. Normally, you know, when you choose a diet, you've almost always already chosen what you're going to do, and it's just waiting for the point where you've got enough willpower to kind of do it. But what we don't really talk about is the differences between the diets. One of the key things that I've found with diets is that they fundamentally don't make us happy. Yes, there's that period where they're working, we're losing weight, and we have this concept that we're really happy, and we think it's because we're losing weight. The reality is that happiness comes from control, from being able to control your life. And so we're in this bubble where when we're on the diet, we think we're controlling our lives, we're losing weight, but actually all we're doing is we're probably ignoring most of life, focusing just on the diet, and it's just working for a bit. But it doesn't work for very long because they're very rigid. And actually the diets install in us a toxic mindset. They install this idea that unless you're on a diet, unless you're being perfect, you can't lose weight. And that's one of the things that we want to start to unlearn. Having said that, you know, each of these systems has their kind of negative point, and also the likely way that we kind of bomb out of them. So for example, on keto, which is where you really go very low carb, you virtually eliminate all carbs, so things like fruits, crisps, bread, all of those things you get rid of. And it takes you then 7 days to get into what's called ketosis, which is where your body's starting to burn fat day to day. And it's a very efficient way to lose weight, but it's very difficult to stay in that lifestyle. It's great for people who are single. You know, it's like the kind of single man who's like 50 and 60. It's an ideal diet because, you know, if you're single and you've got no one dependent on you, you can just buy what you want, and, you know, quite fixing your ways really easy. But for normal people that are kind of you know, like for, I don't mean normal people, but people who have a life with dependencies, kids, parents, you know, running around, and you can't really dictate everything, keto is very hard to follow, because when you fall off it, it takes 7 days to get back on it. I'm going to skip fasting for a second. Let's go on to Weight Watchers. That's about portioning, calorie counting, counting your points. What you tend to do with Weight Watchers is come up with standard ways of eating. So you'll eat certain things always in the morning, certain things at lunchtime, and yes, they're calorie controlled in that you know how many calories they've got, but they become boring. So Weight Watchers, really, the concept is good in that you've got portion control, but the implementation, it just gets a bit bored of it. Something like Noom, that's one of the most modern diets nowadays, and it's based on psychology, which is great, but it's still got traffic lights on food, it's still got calorie counting, and it doesn't allow you to completely fail. And I think the complete failure, which is where you've just had a terrible day or week and you just give up for a day, a weekend, maybe even a month, you give up for. These diets, they're so hard to get back onto. Now the one I've given it an orange and amber, because fasting is actually one of the most important diets, because the concept is right in that you don't so much talk about what you eat, it talks about when you eat it. Now the problem with kind of intermittent fasting is it's normally called, and normally most people do a 16-8, where it's 16 hours of not eating, 8 hours of eating, which basically means you skip breakfast. The problem with fasting is you have these kind of hours of hunger you've got to endure. But otherwise, it's one of the most flexible diets that doesn't affect your lifestyle. The one negative is once you end up eating bigger portions for your lunch and your dinner, and so when you go back to eating breakfast, you end up eating 3 big portions, and then the weight goes on like nothing else. So each of these diets, they each of them have really good aspects. For example, keto, it's great for type 2 diabetes because it's cutting out the carbs. Again, Weight Watchers, if you can have a Weight Watchers breakfast, in other words, you have a breakfast where you just grab a scoop of something, put it in the microwave with some water and it turns into breakfast, fantastic. The concept is great, but doing it non-stop without the flexibility, that's what creates the toxic mind stop. And also fundamentally, each one of them is not based on you being happier. They're based on you losing weight, and weight loss doesn't make you happy. I'll talk more about that in later videos and even later topics. So I think fundamentally the thing we need to understand is that a traditional diet is misery. And the reason is because you have to give up your lifestyle, you're dependent on others, and it makes you feel broken. And the reason I say that is if you're someone that loves eating, if you enjoy eating, and when you think of something happy, you think of eating your favourite food, a diet basically says to you, your innate feeling, your love for food is wrong. Every fibre in your body is just wrong, and so it makes you feel broken. And that is one of the biggest. That's one of the biggest negatives, I think, because we're not broken. There's nothing wrong with you for loving food. Food is about people coming together, eating together. There's so many positive things around food. The issue is that modern food's a bit too energetic. So, I really think we need to understand that the problem isn't us, it's the food and the diet industry. So the other reason that weight loss is so hard is because your body is designed to store fat, and this comes back to the olden days when we were living in the trees, and we were eating plant-based food or food that was quite low calorie per mouthful. You definitely weren't eating meat every single meal every single day. If you're catching animals to eat, you had them infrequently because you had to catch them. So your body is designed to store fat, so everything energy, so everything about it, when there's some spare fat, it's gonna store it. And modern life keeps giving us this food which encourages our body to store it, so that's why it's so hard. And that's why we need to take a slightly smarter approach to weight loss. Instead of just trying to count calories, we need to count the right calories and in the right way. So the balanced approach is really about making two simple changes, or two simple perspective changes, and that's to try and be a little bit healthier for life. And the important thing there is we're not binge dieting. We're not trying to lose as many kilos as possible in the shortest amount of time, because your body at any one time is a reflection of what you're eating. So if you eat a certain way, lose lots of weight and go back to eating that same way, you'll go back to the same weight. Maybe even more, because you'll overcompensate, and if you've had lost all that weight and then put it on again, it'll make you feel sad, and then you'll need to lose even more weight. So that kind of idea of being healthier for life is quite scary, but I want you to think about the amount of change. And if I say 10 to 15% change in your life as opposed to 60, 70, 80% on a diet, that makes it a bit more palatable. Also, the most important thing is that we're going to focus on making it easier. So where previous diets are restrictive, complicated, expensive. What we'll try and do is do the complete opposite and make it so there's no paperwork to fill in. And in theory, what we're going to do is actually a lot less. So we're not focusing on the short-term weight loss. We're not really even focusing on the weight loss. What we're focusing on is trying to make healthier decisions, happier. And the way we're going to do that is by experimentation or calibration. And this is where the two extremes are then brought into context. So if you see on the left-hand side, you've got your original favourite food, well my original favourite food. I love all of that junk food. On the right hand side you've got the kind of the pure rabbit food, the kind of that's the way I would describe it. If I was being brutally honest, I would eat pizza and things all day long. Now the path you want to take is not to go as extreme as possible. We don't all want to go plant-based overnight just to be healthy, because we're not going to stick at it. Equally, we can't stay in our current food stuff. So it's about finding that balance. What you want to find is the minimum effort to get to a point where you're not effectively putting on weight, or where you're in control of your weight, and we call that finding your edge. What is your balance point? What is the amount of good, kind of really healthy food compared to the more tasty food? And I think this is a little bit like surfing. So I'm going to give you an example of originally when I first found out about the weight loss, I kind of felt a bit overwhelmed. I felt like I was lost at sea. The crap of life kind of comes as a wave, comes over you, covers you, and you're just struggling to breathe, you're struggling to stay afloat, and life just feels a bit shitty. You feel like you're out of control. But what finding your edge does is, if you can tune into your hunger, you're actually able to get to a point where you're in exactly the same sea as you were, but you have a different perspective on life, and you've made some small changes, and that enables you to be more in control. And that's what I think life is about. It's about doing hard stuff with a big smile on your face, enjoying eating some of that healthy food, because it's making you healthy, and that it's contributing to you living longer, and that's the real change. It's not about enduring misery, it's about a slight change in perspective, so that some of the time you're really enjoying the food that makes you healthy, and that's going to help you find your edge. So that's what this is all about. It's becoming more balanced, helping you to make choices most of the time that are a bit more logical, not based on strict rules, but allowing you to juggle the things in your life, and then the times when you can't, you just enjoy the food and enjoy life. Okay, so that's the end of the third episode. The next one is all about why do we keep failing long term before. Look forward to seeing you there.